Hi, welcome to Morning Mercy. My name is James. I am a former follower of the teachings of William Branham, and I am creating this podcast to help support people on the same journey that I took 10 years ago when I began walking away from what was the entirety of my identity, belonging to a message church. It consumed my entire life. I was an associate pastor and had been for over 10 years. I grew up in and around the message. And so, as part of a faith group like this, the experience of walking away is extremely difficult. It's traumatizing. There's all kinds of emotions that come up. And now that I have been away from that group for a long time, it feels important to me to come back and to begin speaking from the view that I have now of the journey that I've taken. And my interest is more to the people in those initial stages of leaving, because those are the hardest, most confusing times. So if you've been away from a few years, maybe you will already know some of the things that I'm talking about. But if you're in the early stages of questioning, maybe you're still even part of the group, belonging to a church, and you're quietly in your own mind beginning to think about how you go about leaving and what it is you're going to encounter. There's a lot of fear, a lot of confusion. So hopefully I can shed a little bit of light on what you're going to go through. But I think all of these things, regardless of where you are in the journey, it helps to hear it, to reassess yourself. So I hope that whoever might be listening to this, even people who aren't part of my former group, you may never have heard of the name William Branham, but there's all kinds of faith groups that have an excessive grip over their followers to a degree that your life is essentially controlled to where you do not have a sense of individuality. You've given your life and you're expected to live your life for the church and the faith group that you belong to. And contesting that puts yourself at risk. And if you ever feel that, then perhaps you're belonging to a group that isn't extremely healthy for you. Today I want to talk about something that that I feel like would be valuable to somebody who's in those early stages. And I'm going to chalk it down to one response. If I were given this question, if somebody were to ask me, like, what is the biggest thing that you might give as advice? Like, what's the one piece of advice that you might give to somebody who's in the early stages of leaving? My response to that, there's a lot of layers to it when you dig into it. But if I had to give advice, one piece of advice to somebody in those early stages, it's this: become profoundly curious, such that you become hungry for understanding. I'm going to say that again, is that you become hungry for understanding. Why is that important? And what do I mean by that? And what I'm going to begin to list off here are common things that people will experience in a post-cult experience as you're going through what would be called recovery. You're going to feel a sense of purposelessness. Like, what is my purpose? That's going to lead to, a grieving. You're going to feel a sense of deep grief, of loss. You're grieving losing your community, your identity, your safety, your friendships, your relationships. And that's going to bring a sense of depression even. You might even begin to feel a sense of isolation and then also distrust. Who do you trust? Because even the former members of the group, you begin listening to people who've left before you. Some of them have been gone a long time and their lives have changed dramatically. Like, are they even safe to talk to? Because some of them aren't even Christians anymore. Some of them have no faith. Some of them now belong to a certain kind of church and they're talking about things that you don't understand. Are they even safe? Can you even trust what they're telling you? Like, my advice, even right now, might feel very unsettling. I'm saying things to you that you're not sure if you can trust me. You don't even know if you can trust yourself, because are your thoughts corrupted? Is your interpretation of the Bible even accurate? Do you even have a relationship with God? Do you even have the Holy Spirit? Any of these things are now up for debate, which could bring up anger, because everything was so settled and now everything is so torn apart and it feels so unfair. There's a lot of these things that you're going to feel. A lot of fear of from a spiritual perspective, a fear of your life actually being at risk, because isn't the rapture going to come? The rapture could come any minute. And are you now unsafe? Are you now unqualified? And by the way, the world might end, because all the signs and wonders and all the things that you've been told are coming, they seem to be manifesting in the world out there. And so now, are you even safe? There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear that you may never find the truth again. There's a lot of fear that even in your own family, like if you're married, maybe your spouse doesn't share the same views that you have anymore. Is your marriage at risk? Are you going to lose your friendships? Are your family members going to accept you? You have family members that are part of the church. Are your parents going to love you anymore? All those types of things. You've been so used to even maybe a black and white perspective. There's a lot of confusion that can come. Because there's confusion, you may not be able to make decisions anymore. Like, you're very indecisive all of a sudden. Like, should I go there? Should I go here? Should I talk to them? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I think this? Should I do that? You don't quite know what the next move is. You're very indecisive. Before, things were clear. Now they're not. How do I make a decision? What's the next step? I don't know. Which could feel very isolating, because now you're alienated from anything, because you don't belong to anything. And so now you're isolated and alienated. Your self-esteem, because at one time you were a somebody, you had a reputation. You were part of the group, and your reputation as a believer, people looked up to you, people listened to you. Maybe you were a leader in the church. I know for myself, I was a former minister. A few months before I left, I was standing in the pulpit of Donnie Reagan's church, preaching. I preached a youth convention. And 2 months later, I wasn't even a message believer. My reputation was absolutely tarnished. I had people telling me, even if you come back to the message, you'll never be trusted again. And so, my goodness, like, that feeling of confidence, my self-esteem was like wrecked. I felt embarrassed. That's something that you're embarrassed, especially if you really begin to understand what it was that you were a part of. Like, you're ashamed and embarrassed. You're embarrassed as a father, because here you have kids that depended on you, and you let them, it feels like you let them down. And you're embarrassed because you've been preaching to your neighbors and to your family members and your friends, and you've been telling them, your co-workers, you've been living this life and this standard and this way that you're so sure of, and now your tone is changing, and now you don't even know what's right, and now are you going to have to go back to them and tell them, like, actually, I don't even know what I think about anything anymore. And you're embarrassed that you were duped, that you were lied to, and you believed it, and you went with it, and you did it for years and years. Maybe some people have been a part of it for 30, 40 years. their entire life. They raised their kids. Everything they invested. They gave their money and their tithes. They preached. They were on the mission field. And there's now this sense of embarrassment. Yeah, there's so many things that can go on. There's all measure of confusion. You depended so much on the church and the community and the lifestyle. There's all kinds of relationship issues that can arise. Questions that are very complicated. Your marriage was built around this. Everything that you knew as a couple about the roles that you played with each other. Even things like intimacy, and I know that gets into delicate subject matters, but it's real. Your sense of sexuality, your sense of relationship, of love, of everything now is confusing. I could go on and on and on. The reason why I'm doing is I've listed a whole bunch of things that you might be experiencing. And now I'm going to go back to my initial thing. If there's one piece of advice that I would like to give, it's to be hungry for understanding. Why are you feeling all of these things? This enormous weight of emotion and confusion and all of it that's coming upon you, and it's on your mind endlessly and constantly, and you can't get away. Why? There's so many things to begin to understand within all of this. And that is going to become your journey. And I would say this, there's a lot of people, their tendency in the message itself was to be a passenger. We're not prone to want to think and reason our way through in a very critical way. We weren't taught to critically think. It was a yes and an amen kind of group. There was only a few talking heads above us that were the leaders of all the dialogue and conversation. So to break away from that and to now have to critically think is a very uncomfortable position. But here is something that you really need to embrace, is the journey of trying to understand. And it's uncomfortable and it's frustrating and it feels like an enormous amount of work. But the breaking down and the deconstructing of why do I feel embarrassed? Like, why am I embarrassed? Why do I feel so much fear? What is it that causes fear? Why is it that my relationships now feel so unsafe? Within my own family, like, why am I nervous around my spouse? Why is it that now that we're in this unstable kind of territory, why do I feel unsafe? Why am I so scared to go to another church? Like, why? What is the thing that's making me afraid to pick up a book or listen to a sermon by a man who isn't a message preacher? Why am I afraid? Why am I so afraid to miss a church service? Why can't I make decisions? Why am I so distrusting of myself, of other people? Why do I feel so angry? See, wanting to understand what has happened to you begins with beginning to break down what it is to belong to a group like this. That might mean that you're going to venture into things like that were taboo from the world that we come from, but actually to break into this realm of psychology. Because what's happening, what psychology really is, it's the science of the mind. It's what's going on in your mind. Psychology is so taboo in the messages because, look, it's not about that, right? Like, that's too scientific. It's all about your faith and your belief. But really what you need to understand is there's stuff that's going on in your mind that's affecting the way that you think. Why is the way that you think being so affected? So actually bothering to understand the science of your mind and how somebody is influenced in the way that you are influenced. It's actually very useful to understand what a cult is. Because that's a scary word. Like, did we belong to a cult? Was this actually a cult? You don't have to use that word right away, but like, why not explore what constitutes a cult? Why not get into an understanding of what something like undue influence is? Do you even know what that term is? Do you know what cognitive dissonance is? The feeling of discomfort when you're between two opposing ideas. Like, why is it so uncomfortable to be sitting in this position of like not knowing what to think? Because on one hand, this is what I've always believed. And on the other hand, this is new information that I've received that seems to oppose what I've been told my whole life. And why am I so scared sitting in between it? What is that feeling? See, seeking understanding about all the things that you're going through. And this is my belief, that with understanding, you get clarity. And with clarity, you begin to have freedom from the turmoil that you're beginning to experience. Because it's no longer a boogeyman that's living in your brain. It's no longer something that can affect you in the same way. Because when the anger comes, you begin to be able to take the anger and say, okay, I'm feeling angry. Why am I feeling angry? Where's this coming from? Okay, let's trace it back. Let's dig into the understanding and the things that I've learned about this emotion in regards to my experience. Why am I feeling so lonely and sad? Like, what is it that I can understand about this feeling? All of this for me was the most powerful thing that I could begin to experience, because it takes the emotion and it begins to remove the power behind the emotion. And you begin to take steps forward. You begin to take steps forward. And now you're opening up doors and you're looking at behind the doors of things that you weren't supposed to peek behind before. Like, oh, all these taboos, like when William Branham, and this is now where you can actually begin to break down stuff about William Branham's teaching. If you feel so inclined, like my pastor warned me against looking at this. And I'm afraid to look at that because I've been told that if I look at that, then I'm questioning the prophet. And now, you know what happens when you question the prophets, and when you contest the headship, you're rebelling against the headship of your pastor. But what happens if you actually go up to that and you say, okay, actually, I want to understand more about this. So yeah, I'm going to go and I'm going to open up the door. And I'm going to look into the forbidden place that I was told that I wasn't supposed to look. Oh, even when I say that, maybe you're going to be thinking, oh, this sounds like the serpent in the garden. He's trying to talk you into eating and tasting of the fruit. See, those are things that begin to play in your mind. Is that what I'm doing? See, you ought to contest even the things that I'm saying. Contest what I'm saying by looking into it and looking for more information. Because if I'm saying something that's helpful and true, then it shouldn't be scary to look into what I'm saying and challenge what I'm saying. Because there's information that you're going to find when you contest what it is that I'm saying. And you should be able to go and contest the thing that your pastor has told you. And golly, when the prophet told you to mindlessly obey and believe the thing that he said about his life, and you begin to discover that maybe there's something off about that, well, we're just going to seek a little more understanding about that. and you can actually begin to do that. Understanding brings clarity. Clarity brings answer, and it takes away the emotion so that you can make a good decision and move forward. And that's the process that you're going to begin going through over the next many years. It's going to take time. It's going to take time to go through that process. And not everybody's wired the same way. I'm the kind of person who is willing to open up every door and question everything. And some people aren't going to have the patience for that, and that's okay. The sooner you can move past critical things, the most important things, to where you can be standing on your feet, feeling good inside, feeling sure inside, feeling safe once again inside, and able to look at yourself and feel like I'm going to be okay. Like I'm going to be okay. When you begin to feel like this is going to work out, like I am safe, I'm okay, you'll know that you're in a much better place when your thoughts begin to turn positive, when you begin to see the light forming in the distance. Because yes, it might take some time to get there, but you will get there. Understanding brings clarity. Clarity takes away the emotion. When you take away the emotion, then you can more confidently step forward and make decisions based on clarity and understanding. Does it sound like I'm talking about reasoning away your faith? You're going to have to decide stuff like that. For me, I have no doubt that I made the right decision to leave the message. I can't give you that kind of confidence. I don't want to give you that kind of confidence. I've always said this, and I believe it wholeheartedly. I cannot break down any idol that you might have. It's not my job to do that. Because if I break your idol down, then you're going to just rebuild it. But what you need to do is you need to examine your thoughts and your beliefs. And if it needs to be broken down and destroyed, then you do it. Can't be me. It's got to be something you do for yourself. That's what I believe. So, understanding. Seek understanding is your first most important thing, because you're going to need to understand everything that's coming in your recovery, for your future, for yourself, for your family, for whatever it is that lies ahead. Understanding is a beautiful and wonderful thing to have in your toolkit. And really what I'm talking about is critical thinking. To develop the sense of critical thinking. It's going to aid you, because the world out there is chaotic. It's a little crazy out there. And there's going to be people out there trying to get you to think the way that they think and to do the way that they do. There's a lot of groupthink out there. The ability to think and find understanding in whatever situation comes up, invaluable, will be invaluable throughout your life. That's all I really want to talk about. I want to encourage you in your journey that you will find more power, more control, more assurance for your future, the directions that you go from here. Understanding is a beautiful tool. Seek understanding. Thank you for listening. My name is James. This is Morning Mercy.